Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Many of you have asked me to go over this new executive order in New York City from Mayor Mamdani about reducing fees and civil penalties for small businesses. And based on my experience in New York City, I understand why you're asking. I have an entire playlist called Why Businesses Leave New York City, and the first video in that series has a thumbnail of New York City is driving me insane. I had a small business there from 2008 until 2022 before I decided to leave for another state. When I go through this article and when I go through some of my experiences, I want to make it clear that before I say anything, I wish the best of luck to the new mayor, Mamdani. Congratulations on your victory, and I do hope that you succeed in making New York City a place that is more affordable for working New Yorkers, and also importantly, making it a place where small businesses can flourish. I will always remember from the bottom of my heart what it was like to start a business from nothing with $250 in my pocket, no credit, no connections, no nothing, working out of a park, putting up pull tab signs and Craigslist ads, and building that into a company that is known around the world, that has a reputation around the world, that's had over a dozen employees at one point, that has still existed today. That will always hold a special place in my heart. New York City is the place where I was able to do that because you have 8.5 million people in a space the size of Knoxville, Tennessee, from all over the world, and lots of opportunity. And when I talk about any of the complaints that I have about New York City, it doesn't come from a place of like me saying, me hating the people that are there or anything like that. It comes from a place of frustration because I like seeing people walk in my shoes and walk in my path to success or relive the success that I've had. When I created that video playlist on how to do motherboard repair and small business advice, it was because I wanted to throw the ladder back down so that people could follow in my footsteps. If I become successful once, I get to enjoy that and be happy once. But when I see other people become economically independent and free and make people happy by fixing things that didn't work before, when I see that, I get to relive that happiness over and over again. And that is infinitely more important to me than there just being a smaller market because I didn't make videos showing people how to do stuff. I'm very happy when I see people being able to follow in my footsteps and make something of themselves. Everything that I say here is out of love and care because I actually do want to see New York City go back to being a place where somebody can start something from nothing and have a great chance of success the same way that I did 16 years ago. This executive order is going over a lot of the things that you'll hear people talk about when it comes to penalties, whereas the small business owners are forced to close because keeping a business afloat costs too much. And they talk about how they don't want to make sure that New York City doesn't have any regulations that are outdated, unnecessary, that are otherwise creating undue hardship. They want to document the existing fees and civil penalties. They want to go through all the initial fees for licenses, permits, inspections, applications, an inventory of all the different penalties. They want to go over some fees that they want to eliminate. They want to establish an amnesty program. And this really does have, in my opinion, the best of intentions at heart. I want to talk about the one blind spot that I think this has, not because I want to crap on the order, and not because I don't want Mamdani to be very successful as mayor. I want to point this out because I hope that during his administration, he is able to make things better for people who are starting off at the bottom like I did, who want to try and create something for themselves. Because I do think that New York City is one of the best places in the world if you want to create something from nothing when you're totally broke and turn it into something. When you have a city of 8.5 million people from all around the world in that tiny space, and you can get around paying a few bucks for a Metro card, and you can, you never know who you're next to. There's a lot of opportunity for success there that doesn't exist in other parts of the world. And I want to see that again someday. But there are a number of other items that are difficult. And also when I see this covered by the news, they are mentioning things that are rules that I actually don't disagree with. For example, one of the fines that was mentioned by the New York Times in covering this order is for failing to display a price on a shelf next to the item. Now, if you are selling something, and this happens in many places in New York City, if somebody walks in from the neighborhood, this may be $1.95. If somebody walks in that's maybe outside the neighborhood, maybe $3. So I understand the concept of having a price next to the item or a price on the item, and I think that that's a reasonable thing if you have a store where you are selling items where people can walk in and physically look through them. I don't have prices on items at my store because I sell services, not parts. But if you go to store.rossmangroup.com, at least when I used to have stuff for sale, like everything had a price next to it. If you have an online store, it should have prices. If you have an in-store store where people are browsing, there should be prices. I'm not saying that we should get rid of laws and regulations altogether. Because when people talk about burdensome laws and regulations, you wind up getting what you get with like the current administration, where like, yes, there are too many regulations on business. So the first one we're going to get rid of is the one that allows you to get a refund if the airline cancels your flight. Like, really? Like, that's where you had to start. So I'm not somebody who thinks there should be no regulations at all. The problem here is the way that these are put. It's not even necessarily the fine, it's the manner in which the fines are distributed. You can see that the New York Times failed at articulating what the actual problem is here. Seems like the two violations quoted, posted refund policy and prices, are very understandable, desirable, and easily complied with. Let's hear some actual silly regulations. There was also another comment here that said, I'd like to open a small business and think they should drastically cut fees and regulations. But how hard is it to display necessary signs? Anybody getting fined for not displaying prices is probably sleazy. And honestly, I agree with you. I had a pricing philosophy page on my website many years ago, and I had this comic made up that goes over this very practice that I talked about, where different people get charged different prices based on what they look like or what their perceived net worth is. At this store, this is a place that I actually worked, and this represents a real human being. The people that are close to me know who it is. If somebody walks in that looks like they're a Wall Street banker, they get charged $300. And if a broke Bushwick hipster walks in, they get billed $75 for the exact same service. This is a scourge on society. It decreases trust everywhere, and if people are getting fined for taking part in this behavior, by all means, I think they should get fined for that. I want to try and discuss what the actual problem is with all of you. So some of the problems that I've had. Firstly, I want to go over the way that this works when new mayors have come into the office over the years. Even Bloomberg was saying this. There was an article about how businesses shouldn't be a cow to be milked. They should be a garden to be cultivated. And this is a blog post from me back in 2012 saying I'm not feeling like much of a cultivated garden right now. I'm talking about a fine that I received that would have been a $1,000 fine if I did not plead guilty to it or settle for the $250, which is that I had my license number on my business cards. I had my license number prominently displayed in my store, in the license in the front of the store, but I did not have it on my invoices or receipts. And because I didn't have the license number on my receipt, I had to settle $250 or lose and pay $1,000 if I lose in court. And this was not bothersome for me necessarily because of the $250. It wasn't about the burdensome fine or the burdensome regulation. I am happy to comply with the regulation. Rather, it's the way that it's implemented. And this is a cultural thing that I don't know how you change with an executive order, but I do think you could change if you really start digging into it. So why does this bother me? When you look into the way it was put together, the rules had not been updated in the book that we get since January of 2009. I paid for my license in December of 2011. I received it in January or February of 2012. So that means that my manual was 3 years out of date at the time that I was looking at it. What I would have to do at this point is I would have to call the Department of Consumer Affairs every single day and wait on hold for like 40 minutes. Have you guys changed any rules recently? Okay, cool, thank you. And I don't have time to do that when I work 12 hours a day in a business. Now, if they had walked into my store and said, hey, by the way, we changed the rules for businesses with your license type, here's what you have to do now, and then they came back 30 days later to make sure I was in compliance, that makes sense. But they didn't do that. They changed the law. They walked into my store after changing the law, and they said, you're violating this law that you never knew existed because we changed it and we never told you, you owe us money. That creates a very adversarial relationship, and it's less about the money. Businesses don't move across the country to other states or other cities over $250 fine. They do that when they feel like they're getting fucked with or disrespected. And that does create an adversarial working relationship between the city and yourself that is not really conducive to success and trust. Or another example, when I was trying to renew my license, I have to pay $350 to have a license to be a consumer and electronics home appliance service dealer. That's $350. I think they take your fingerprint. I forget if it's for the secondhand dealer license or just for that one. It's about $350 plus a fingerprint and some bond, and you can start fixing electronics. They don't test you to see if you know which ends of the soldering iron to grab. They don't test to see if you know what the hell you're doing. They sure as fuck don't ask if you know Ohm's law. It's just give us $350 and you can claim that you fix stuff for people, right? This does not really protect consumers at all. It's a money grab. But whatever, I understand. You have to fund the city government somehow. So I pay my $350. The problem is not that I have to pay $350 for the license. The problem is not that I have to wait to get it. The problem is that you don't issue it at all. And when you don't issue the license at all, even after I have paid for the renewal, after being in business for about 10 years at this point, you say that if I don't take this action, I will have to shut down my business. I cannot stay in business. Now, I was expecting this at the time in this video. I was expecting it so much that I actually took the email receipt that I received from the city saying that I paid for my license. I forwarded it to Paul, who was my chief technical employee at the time, and I asked him to hang this in the front of the store right next to my now expired license, and with a note for the Department of Consumer Affairs inspector, who would inevitably show up one day after it expires, as they always do, saying that I needed to close. This is an email to Steve and Paul S. And it is literally hung right next to my license. If a Department of Consumer Affairs inspector comes in after the 30th and says that our license has expired, show them this, that we paid for the renewal. It takes them forever to send a new one. This video came out in July of 2021, right around the time that that license had expired. I believe it expired around June of 2021. I sent this email to Paul and Steve in June of 2020 because I knew that they were not going to send me the fucking license renewal, because they almost never do. Or they send it to me ripped, and you have to fight for it. Now, the difference here is that in the fighting process to get my license, this was during COVID in 2021, so the building was closed. Nobody answered the phone. Nobody has answered my emails to the Department of Consumer Affairs in the 11 years that I had been sending them. So there was nothing I could do. If I didn't have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers and get the attention of local news, there would be nothing I could do. I would have had to either shut down my business or face much higher fines than that for operating without a license, even though I had done everything I needed to actually obtain one. And as I go over in the video, it's asking me for a PIN code that I no longer have because I used the PIN code to renew my license to pay for it a year ago when you sent me the receipt that said that it had successfully gone through. One of my personal favorites is we sell devices from time to time that people recycle here. Sometimes people will keep items here for months and months if they don't want to pay for a repair or because it's too far gone, and we may sell those devices. We keep detailed receipts of the customer saying, yes, you can have it, and this is not a purchase because I have not purchased anything from you. There was a law that said that when you buy something from a customer, when money is exchanged, you need to fill out a certain form. I don't buy laptops from people, generally speaking, because I just don't want to be in that business. I'm not a pawn shop. I am a component level electronics repair person. I don't want to be a pawn shop. It's annoying. I don't like when people use this as a garbage pail to begin with, much less turning that into an actual business model. So I have all the documentation from every customer that has left something there. And they say, well, you can't tell me who you bought this from, so we're just going to give you a fine. I'm like, I didn't buy it. I have the documentation right here. Like, this is the customer. See the serial number, see the email from them, and they didn't care. So I called the Department of Consumer Affairs to ask how I can be in compliance with this particular law. What do I need to do so that I am in compliance with what you have asked me to do? And when I do that, this is what happens.
They never picked it up, and they won't answer my phone calls or text messages or emails. Does that have to get entered into the Leads Online database, or how does that work?
Oh. Well,
He cannot tell me. He is unable to tell me how to be in compliance with their own law. I sent an email to the people he suggested I email at the end of this phone call. And that was almost 5 years ago. To this day, I've never received a response. The last straw for me was an audit that lasted about 1.5 years, where they thought that I owed almost somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million, if I remember the exact calculations, when I actually owed them less than $5,000. And that was just because I didn't argue it. If I had actually contested this, I likely would have been zero, as it was in a subsequent audit. When I moved to Texas, I called the office of the state comptroller, and I asked them which items were sales taxable and which were not, and I gave them examples. Within 7 minutes, I got somebody on the phone who was able to answer it. And she could tell that there was a little bit of shakiness in my voice because I just wasn't really sure of it, and I explained what happened before. And she said, well, we could actually send you something on our letterhead that says that this is and this is not, so that you have a record of it. So if you get audited in the future and there's an issue like this, you can actually show them this letterhead that you got from the comptroller so that you have nothing to worry about. Businesses don't move over $250 fines or $500 fines here and there, and they don't move because of 1 or 3% in tax rates. That's silly. For a small business that has hundreds of customers a week or a month or thousands of people, that the uncertainty of going somewhere else and losing your customer base altogether, starting everything from scratch, nobody does that over a few $100s here or there. They do it when there's some sort of existential threat. For me, the $250 here and there wasn't it. And admittedly, to be clear, this was at the state level. This wasn't at the city level, just to be fair to Mr. Mamdani. It's not about that. It's about an unsureness over what it is that you will actually pay. My company makes less money in Texas than it did in New York City, and I expect it to. Austin is a city that has 10% the number of people. But it's not about that. It's not about the $200 here or the $400 there. It's not about the waiting. It's about the being fucked with at either the city or the state level. It's that feeling that somebody is just sticking a knife into you, not because they have anything personally against you, just because that's what they do to everybody. And that's the thing that needs to change. It's a culture. It's like, are we working with you or are we trying to find ways to fuck you? I am okay with paying taxes. Paying taxes funds a lot of the services that I use, the things around me. And until we find a better way to run society, this is the way that's going to have to be. But I want to know what it is I have to pay. I don't want you to make something up and then come back to me later and say, yeah, you owe us $1,000 for this thing that we made up that we never told you. No. I don't want you to have a rule where when I ask you, how do I obey the rule? You can't fucking tell me. I don't want to deal with a tax where you reinterpret how this tax should work, go back 3 to 5 years to every single one of my transactions in other countries and pretend that I owe you over $1 million that I don't even fucking have. No. No. I think his heart is in the right place, and I want to see him win. Because if the mayor wins, the people in New York City win. If the mayor wins, the businesses in New York City win. And when the people win and the businesses win, the city wins. I want to see the city win. It was a place of opportunity for me. And it got me to where I am today. I'm very thankful for that. But I think addressing this solely at the level of like this fine is a little too high or this license is a little too high, it misses one of the fundamental points of the culture of how they deal with people. And this is one of the best ways I could think of to explain it. There was a different audit that I was involved in many years back. I try to explain this to people who are kind of used to the way taxes work in, let's say, the United Kingdom, because people in the United Kingdom that I've talked to, not everybody, but like people that I've spoken to, don't really understand American businesses' aggravation of taxes the same way. And I think it's because their government kind of works with them on things in a way that it doesn't happen here. So in the UK, at least from the reports that I've heard from people, the government, to some extent, when they're auditing you, they kind of work with you. They want you to be successful. Here, I'll give you one example. I'm going to change some of the numbers and some of the things around just because I don't want to get too exact with everything. But let's say that I'm being audited, and let's say that I say on my company QuickBooks that our invoiced receipts were $1.95 million this year. But the auditor looks at the bank account and they see $2.12 million was taken in. They will then come to me and say, there is a discrepancy. Your bank says that you've taken in $2.12 million in the statements, but your invoicing system says that you've only taken in $1.95 million. Now, I want you all for just 30 seconds to think about what it is that could cause there to be that discrepancy without it being a tax cheat. Okay, I'm not going to give you 30 seconds because they didn't even give me 30 seconds. There are two main items that are going to cause the discrepancy. Number one is sales tax. Number two are refunds. Sales tax. New York City has 8.875% sales tax. When I take in sales tax, that is not I'm not invoicing for that. That's not like one of my billable things. I'm collecting that on behalf of the city and state, and then I'm rendering that to the city and state, but that's not my money. Like that's not mine. If I even try to claim that that's mine, that would be breaking the law. A second is refunds. When you take in money, and then I give it back to the customer, that's taken out of my gross receipts, but it's still going to show up as gross income if you look at a bank statement. Now, the problem here is not that I mismarked it. The problem here is that the auditor themselves actually knows the answer to each of these two questions. However, if I don't give them the right answer, even though they know what the right answer is, and they admit it after I told them it was the right fucking answer, I would then get in trouble for underpaying my taxes. If you know that I have not done something wrong, but you need to hear me tell you why it wasn't wrong, and if I miss the riddle, then I get in trouble. That is a very adversarial system. And it's different from the system when I go to other countries or I talk to people who do business in other countries and how they deal with their taxing authorities. And the reason that I think there's as much animosity in the US as there is towards some of these things is because of the culture around it, the abusive culture. Here, when we're going to make a rule, we're not going to tell you what it is, and we're not even going to give you a warning before we get you in trouble for it. We're going to make a rule. We're not going to tell you how to comply with it. We're not going to have anybody that works here that can tell you how to comply with it, but you get in trouble for it. We are going to have a misinterpretation of how this tax law works, and for 18 months of time, where you can visibly see between 2021 and 2022, you'll see that a lot of my hair went missing during that time. We're just going to leave it up in the air that you may owe us more than your entire net worth, all of what's in your business bank account, and all of what's in your personal account. That's a cultural thing. And that's not really something that I know how to address via executive order, but it's something that needs to be a part of the conversation because that's why businesses leave. Again, I hear all the time. You'll see the criticism constantly, like some business like mine would move because of like slightly lower taxes here. Maybe Dell or Intel, I could see them doing something like that. Or Hewlett-Packard, something where you're not dealing with like walk-in customers on a daily basis from your local street. They're international businesses. But for the businesses that we're talking about here, these are not businesses that want to leave over that. They're leaving over the feeling of getting fucked. Is this a good step forward? Yeah, I think it is. But I think it needs to be a holistic approach that really roots out that culture in the entirety of city and state government. And I know that Zoran can only work at the city level, but I wish him the best of luck with it, because if he is able to do a good job at it, then he manages to make the city better for everybody. Those are my thoughts on it. Not sure if it's what you wanted to hear, but it's what came to mind. I wish him the best of luck with all of it. I hope that New York City becomes a much better place to do business in. And if it is, I'll be very happy. I want to see people be able to follow in the success that I've had in life. And I want that to be available to everybody, not just past me. That's it for today. And as always, hope you learned something. I wish the best of luck to Mr. Mayor Mamdani in getting all this stuff done and in rooting out these things that will cause businesses to lose their shit and close. See you in the next video. Bye now.